Good afternoon, everyone. In today's video, I'm going to focus in on the energy sector, looking to answer one simple question, and that's, is energy still the leading sector? There's few places to hide in the current market. However, if you take a look at a chart of something like, say, XLE, you'll see it's one of the few bullish overall sector charts out there, along with individual components that are still bullish as well. So in today's video, my goal is to do a volatility and price comparison of XLE, USO, UGA, and then we'll move on to the top holdings inside of XLE, which will be a bulk of today's video. So starting first with the larger ETF charts here, this is what I see for XLE. There's a few reasons why I'm bullish it. First, the obvious, market pulse is in a stage of acceleration. This is very clearly telling us that XLE, ever since the beginning of this year, has been green, meaning a stage of acceleration. It's dipped into gray, meaning a stage of accumulation for a little bit of time here, but never on this chart do you see any red, which I think is very interesting to call out, because on almost every single stock chart, sector chart, anything else you look at, you'll see the market pulse, while it may currently be a different color, has definitely been red for some course of the action for this year. Now, the other second point regarding the actual chart is we're trading inside of a channel, and we have been ever since March. We can see that's where we started, and we've just been bouncing inside and out within this channel, and currently we're towards the top end of it. So the question here is, are we going to break outside of the channel this time? We did make a new high today, so do we build on that momentum? Does the squeeze finally fire long, breaking above really 84.60? 86 I think would take us outside of the channel. Or do we fall back inside of the channel, closer back towards that 80 mark, still being bullish XLE? So that's XLE's chart. Now if we move on to USO, a similar idea here. Bullish again, but for slightly different reasons. First off, market pulse still a stage of acceleration, but unlike XLE, you can see it did dip red here for just a little bit of time. This is what I'm alluding to, and USO is still stronger than I think a lot of individual tickers and ETFs that you'll find in the market right now. So a little bit less strong in comparison to XLE for the USO ETF, but some other beneficial points is we have 1, 2, and 3 squeeze arrows forming. We're towards the top end of this ascending triangle, and it's likely that with these bullish squeeze arrows, we're likely to break outside of this triangle and break above the support that we see right here, taking us into the next Fibonacci retracement that we have at 618, which is 86.74. So again, bullish inside of USO as well, but we have slightly less strength here as we can see through that market pulse line. Finally, the third ETF, UGA, which is the gasoline ETF, and this is much less liquid in comparison to the previous two. It trades, I think, only about 45K volume, but also stage of acceleration, similar to USO, also dipped into red territory right here. So XLE very clearly out of these three ETFs is the one market that has maintained its structure for the most part this year, and I think would be quote unquote the strongest or the most desirable chart. Now slightly different here, our channel is much wider, if you can even call this a channel inside of UGA. And there we've bounced from the top, coming back in, middle of the channel, market pulse lines up at 64, so far looking like a little bit more downward pressure, but that less liquid volume I think makes this chart a little bit harder to read. Now let me move on to taking a look at individual top holdings, and I'd like to show you how, now that we have this bullish bias established on daily time frame charts, and you've had that established ever since really the beginning of this year, what can you do with that information? How can you take advantage of individual stocks, especially if you don't want to hold overnight risk in the current market? So that's what I'll discuss next. Let's start with taking a look at some of those top holdings inside of the strongest ETF, which was XLE, and this is what that chart looked like. Alright, so coming inside of our charts here, let's start with the ETF again one more time, but taking a look at the intraday activity here on a 1 minute time frame chart. I have our hourly Volatility Box models loaded on, and for all of our stock Volatility Box members, you can download that file by clicking this link inside of the indicator page. In case there's other symbols not in that file you'd like, you can generate your own by putting in your symbols right here. So say EOG, Exelon, whatever it may be, and then click Generate Indicator, and then you would have the files just like that. So two options there, either use the file I use or generate your own. Now coming back inside of the charts here, inside of XLE, The one breach we had was in that 7 to 8 a.m. Pacific hour, where price falls inside of our cyan lines. This is our fade setup, the bread and butter volatility box setup, where we're looking for price to breach our cyan lines. That's step 1. Once that happens, we need to see an oversold confirmation. That's this green arrow, so that's step 2. And if those two conditions are met and you have an opportunity to enter at the cyan line or better, then that's really where we get our entry. Now inside of XLE, if I zoom in, once we had the signal, XLE just continued to rip up higher. You never really got any sort of pullback, and we hit T1, which T1 is the same amount you risked, about 44 cents in XLE for the first target. Now if I zoom out here, first off, we take a look at XLE. Once you make that move, XLE pulls back one more time, a double bottom, before really ripping up for the rest of the day. So the question is, while XLE did not give you an entry here, meeting all of the rules, are there other stocks inside of XLE, other top weighted stocks that did, where you did have a better opportunity to play this trade? So first off, a quick little trick for those that don't know, if you come inside of the Analyze tab, you go to Fundamentals here, you can find a list of the top holdings if ThinkOrSwim has data for that particular ETF. So for XLE here, we can see XOM Volatility, CVX, EOG, ConocoPhillips, and that list goes down to the top 20. So if we come back to the charts here, from XLE, we move on to say XOM, and we ask ourselves the question, is XOM one of the driving contributors to the volatility we're seeing in XLE right now? Same time period, 7 to 8 a.m. Pacific, ExxonMobil could not fall to its cyan entry lines. So here, ExxonMobil is not one of the driving contributors of the volatility. It's not Exxon that's driving XLE's volatility. So the question is, what is? Let's move on to CVX. CVX here, we can see price does breach the cyan entry line, but very similar to XLE, just jumps up without us. Now, one stock where we did get an opportunity to enter is ConocoPhillips. If I zoom into ConocoPhillips here, same time period, price action falls a little bit deeper inside of our clouds. So that's step 1, we breach our cyan entry lines. Step 2, we're waiting for the edge signal. In this case, we even got our V-shaped reversal pattern in ConocoPhillips as we waited for that edge signal. We had the Keltner channel wedges plotting, and then we had our edge signal confirmation with this green arrow. That price was also better than the cyan entry line. So this meets all of our rules right here inside of ConocoPhillips. The risk involved for COP, 84 cents, looking for that same 84 cents for the first target, and then move the stop to break even and see how high is high, and play some other targets, fibs, retracements, things of that nature. Now, this first move inside of ConocoPhillips, while an XLE and CVX hit the first target, did not hit the first target here. So in ConocoPhillips, you had to endure this slight little bit of heat. Before then, ultimately, ConocoPhillips did continue to take off, and if I zoom out here, you see how COP ended the day from the actual point of entry from this edge signal here. That was a plus 3% move inside of ConocoPhillips and a much more systematic move. This was the only place where you really had a volatility edge. Again, all supported from that XLE bullish bias that stemmed from the daily time frame chart where we discussed this channel. So that's where hopefully all of this is coming together in terms of how to take daily bias, use that to find intraday volatility for some of these stocks, especially where you're looking to buy in the current market, and take advantage of some of these reversals. And if we do start to see some of those relief rallies coming into play, I think more and more bullish trends, at least the shorter term bullish trends, may form, which allows you to take advantage of these long opportunities. And of course, along the way, you also have the short side setups when price breaches the other side cyan lines. And one other point to call out in terms of the strongest energy stocks from today's activity. For that, if we come into our live scanner, we filter out first by aggressive to see which stocks breached our conservative, and we'll say short side, so the upper end, meaning a lot of bullish strength. There we can find XL Energy as one that stands out. And if we repeat the same activity, but this time with the aggressive models, there's one more here that stands out, which is Exelon. And if we take a look at each one of those charts here, now taking a look at Exelon first, Exelon hits our live scanner when we hit the upper edge of the volatility box, and this is towards the end of the day. Notice how we have a nice little overlap here. So this is the hourly model, this is the daily model, the wider green boxes compared to the shorter hourly boxes. The two overlap nicely, and even though this was towards the end of the day here, very little time for follow through, you still did get that follow through. So this is more of that systematic overlap where a trend exhausts, of course, towards the end of a day, but it was a sign of strength inside of EXC. Another stock we said was XL Energy. Taking a look at XL Energy, this is that same dip we were looking at inside of ConocoPhillips. Again, does not breach the Volatility Box or any of those levels. However, towards the upper edge here in terms of strength, we breached the aggressive Volatility Box, continue ripping through that, and then we hit the conservative Volatility Box, and this is around that same time period where we saw inside of Exelon just a little while earlier. So a lot of strength inside of two of these stocks that we took a look at, but also similar strength inside of some of the larger top holdings inside of XLE. One more time to recap all of this, we started with our daily time frame. We took a look at XLE, we took a look at USO, and we took a look at UGA to basically determine bullish bias across the board here. We then cracked open XLE, taking a look at the Analyze tab, the top holdings, trying to find some of the stocks that stood out. ConocoPhillips was one which met all of our rules in terms of a fade setup, and we also had CVX, which breached, but we didn't have our rules met. So two stocks where we saw similar volatility to what we're seeing inside of XLE. And then we also had two stocks which we took a look at, XEL and EXC, both of which were showing strength on the daily time frame chart along with that 1 minute time frame chart in terms of hitting the upper edge of our volatility box models on the daily models. All right, so hopefully all of this brings us together in terms of, is energy still a leading sector? Very much so. If we do get that pullback inside of the channel here in XLE, then all of those long setups I think will really be the ones that we're looking out for as we continue to pull back to the market pulse before trying one more time to break above this channel. If we do break above the channel, I would be cautious of the short side setups because of course we see here XLE has continuous strength and has had strength for a majority of this year. Alright, hope you found this video to be useful. Take care everyone, good luck trading, and we'll see you in the next update.